is a Democrat? What is a Republican? They are what they advertise, right? What they're telling their constituents. But what are they really? What does a Democrat stand for that's so different from a Republican? These are a lot of questions that the early government considered, and there was two main governmental parties that showed these differences, the Federalists and the Democrats. First was the Federalists, and the first president I'll be using as my example is Adams. He was not well liked by a lot of people because he was a little more sullen and less personable. But he stood for the government having more power, which was the goal of the Federalist Party. Now, during his presidency, he did a lot of things that were slightly controversial because they thought the president should not have this much power, and they accused him of trying to become the next king. Now, he did the Alien Sedition Act, which meant that foreign people would be taken away from the American states, and he also imposed the Supreme Court, which was interesting because the Supreme Court actually decreased the amount of power the presidency could have. Because while the president at the time was the one solely choosing whether they could pass things based on the Constitution, with the Congress of course as well, the Supreme Court became so powerful because they were able to choose whether it was constitutional or not for the president to do things. So in fact, the thing that he imposed took away a lot of power from the government, which was very contradictory to what he said he stood for. The second point is democratic republics, which I will be using Jefferson as my example. His party said that they would reduce the power of the government. They stood for small government. But he was also a major contradiction because during his presidency, he went out and bought Louisiana, which was far outside the bounds of his presidential power. And interestingly, he did that without asking Congress first, and did it even though he probably shouldn't, actually, because of the presidential power. It was outside his power. But then he also, at this time, there was the war going on between France and Britain, and there was a lot of American vessels that were getting stuck in the middle and getting attacked. And so without asking Congress, he said that the American Navy could defend these ships and to attack ships that were attacking American shipments. And that was also outside of his presidential power. So once again, he also kind of contradicted what he said his party stood for. In conclusion, these two presidents in particular, the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans, said they stood for one thing and yet did a lot of different things. This shows us that even from the beginning of our country, there's been a lot of contradiction. This does not mean that they were bad people. This just means that we need to dig a little deeper into who they are and what they stand for, and not just that they stand for a certain party. Thank you.